December 28, 1938. While the Great Depression continues to grind on, 52-year-old Florence Lawrence of West Hollywood is rushed from her home to the hospital after ingesting a combination of ant poison and cough syrup. Doctors were unable to save her, and a search of her home turned up a suicide note. Florence Lawrence was an actress, and the Motion Picture and Television Fund paid for her to be buried in an unmarked grave at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. But while this woman, who had been dealing with ill health, appeared to have been forgotten, 30 years earlier, she had the distinction of being the world's very first movie star. Welcome to Life Stories of the Unknown, where in every episode we remember someone from the past who led a remarkable life that today have become forgotten. In this episode, we are discussing actress Florence Lawrence, the world's first movie star. The motion picture camera was invented in the 1890s, but it wasn't until the following decade that the movie theater business was born. During the early days of what would be known as the silent period, when movies did not have sound, the only movies available for audiences to watch were shorts, and they were produced by just a handful of companies. The early pioneers of this industry were literally making it up as they went, and in 1908, theater owners noticed a pattern. Audiences were beginning to have preferences for the actors that rotated between films. Actors were not credited for their work at this point, but they worked exclusively for the individual companies that contracted them. And the most popular was a woman who became known as the Biography girl in films directed by D.W. Griffith. During this period, film production was controlled by a cartel of companies, but there were independent producers trying to break in as renegades. One of these men was Carl Laemmle, the man who founded Hollywood with his company, Universal Pictures. But for now, Laemmle was an upstart based in the New York area, and his business then was called the Independent Moving Pictures Company of America, or IMP for short. Laemmle knew that he needed a popular actor for his films to be competitive, so he found out who the Biography girl was and reached out to her. In 1910, Florence Lawrence met with Carl Laemmle, and he agreed to pay her more than the $25 a week Biography was giving her, plus something that no other actor had at the time: public recognition for their work. Not only would she be credited by name for her performances, but it would appear on the marquee for everyone to see. But Laemmle had one obstacle for selling Florence Lawrence movies to the public. No one knew who Florence Lawrence was, and he couldn't just call her the Biography girl in his IMP ads. He needed to drum up publicity to make the world know her by name, so he organized a publicity stunt by calling different press outlets and announcing that Florence Lawrence, better known as the Biography girl, has been killed in a streetcar accident. And once her name became well known, he placed ads in the paper for her next movie saying that this rumor was started by rival production companies trying to hurt IMP because the next IMP pictures would be starring Florence Lawrence. But Laemmle was in uncharted publicity with his stunt, and when Lawrence's first film with his company, The Broken Oath, was set to premiere, the crowd was much bigger than anticipated. It became an unruly mob, excited to see the alive and well Florence Lawrence, but the event became too chaotic, and the movie premiere was postponed. A little while later, they tried it again with increased security and a red carpet for the new star to walk on, as she waved to fans when she entered the theater like royalty. She would go on to star in more movies, and during the height of her fame, she was making $500 a week working for Laemmle's new company, Universal Pictures. Things were going great, and soon she married film director Harry Solter, who also worked for Universal, but was making less than half of his wife's salary. Then, in 1915, she suffered a tragedy when filming Pawns of Destiny after a staged fire went out of control, causing her to become burned and fall off the stage where she fractured her spine. She would be unable to work for months, and Universal refused to pay for her medical expenses. She returned to work a few months later and finished the film, but the strain of returning to work was too much, and in 1916, she was temporarily paralyzed for months. In 1920, her husband passed away from a stroke at the age of 46. By 1921, she decided that her life needed a change as she was now a widow. And despite always being in a state of pain, she traveled to Hollywood to mount a career comeback. It didn't work out. She received a leading role in a minor melodrama called The Unfoldment. But after 1924, the only work she could find were uncredited bit parts. While in Hollywood, she met automobile salesman Charles Woodring, and they married that year in 1921. Despite her career faltering, Florence Lawrence was a rich woman, thanks to the money that she and her first husband made from her movie star days. Her and her new husband used that savings to start a business, Hollywood Cosmetics. It specialized in theatrical makeup, along with a line of women's products that Lawrence had personally developed. But the marriage didn't last, and they separated in 1929 while remaining business partners. But Hollywood Cosmetics did not survive the Great Depression, and in 1932, it closed its doors. The couple then formally divorced as well. She married for a third time to Harry Bolton in 1933, but he ended up being an abusive alcoholic, and they divorced in 1934. At this point, she lived in constant pain, her health was failing, and she lost most of her fortune in the stock market crash, with the remaining going to the business that failed. In 1936, MGM Studios head Louis B. Mayer started a program where he enlisted out-of-work silent film-era actors to work as extras for $75 a week. Florence Lawrence signed with him that year. The first woman to have a red carpet premiere was now a background player. In 1937, she was diagnosed with what was described as a rare bone disease that produces anemia and depression, which was incurable. By now, the woman who once owned an estate in New Jersey was sharing a home on Westbourne Drive in West Hollywood with a studio worker named Rob Brinlow and his sister. At 1 p.m. on December 28, 1938, she phoned the offices of MGM to report that she would not be coming to work because she was sick. Sometime after that, she ingested the cocktail of ant poison and cough syrup. Next, she either called her neighbor Marion Menzer to tell her what she did, or Menzer was alerted that something was wrong when she heard Lawrence screaming. Either way, Menzer called an ambulance, but it was too late, and Florence Lawrence was declared dead at 2:45 p.m. The note she left behind said, "Dear Bob, call Dr. Wilson. I'm tired. Hope this works. Goodbye, my darling. They can't cure me, so let it go at that. Lovingly, Florence. P.S. You've all been swell guys. Everything is yours." The death was ruled a probable suicide, and her grave remained unmarked until 1991, when an anonymous British actor paid for her marker. But the year of her birth is inaccurate, with 1890, corresponding to her lying about her age as she got older. She was really born in 1886. Florence Lawrence's final resting place was a far cry from where she was, at the height of her fame. And while she was forgotten later in her life, a handful of film historians dug through her work and pieced together her significance as they rediscovered the world's very first movie star.